Hey, 123 A and P with Dr. O here. I want to give you folks a little bit of a nervous system tutorial. All right, it's pretty cool, I think, trying to imagine things that will interest you. Well, you see everything in white here. That's a collective nervous system, both the central and peripheral nervous systems of your body. And so you can see that anywhere the anatomy goes, the nerves are going to also be in that area. They're bringing in information. We call that afferent input, information, that's sensory input, gathering intelligence, gathering information about the world around us through our sense of touch, vibration, and any sort of tactile sensation is going to be brought into the spinal cord, which is seen centrally there, and ultimately if it's strong enough, it's going to come up and hit the brain stem and ultimately be processed in the brain. So there's sensory information incoming, and then there's motor information that's going out. So that's information coming from the brain that is being utilized to control our voluntary movements and basically command any sort of actions or responses to the stimuli that are coming in. So sensory and motor information are both represented here. All right. And of course, the brain is up yonder. So looking at the posterior side of it, actually this is the cerebellum down there inferiorly, and then the brain stem. But let's start from a lateral view there. So the brain, that squiggly brain, is the cerebrum. Just bring that into magnification there. So we've got a lot of surface area there, all the ups and downs and the peaks and valleys, the gyruses and the sulcuses, as they say, of those bumps. The topography of the brain is so much surface area, makes for so much surface area for processing information. And it was said that some of the most brilliant minds of our day, historically, had very deep fissures. Okay, so the gyruses are the bumps, and then the sulcuses are the grooves, and very, very deep grooves, like Einstein is reported to have, and other geniuses that we've known of upon autopsy supposedly had very deep furrows. And so that ups and down, all those ups and downs makes for so much surface area for processing information, sending and receiving it. So we've got two hemispheres. So you see this split down the middle. All right. We've got one hemisphere, one on each side, and then we've got 5 lobes to each hemisphere. All right. So the frontal lobe is right here. Let me zoom this in a little bit there. This is the frontal lobe, and that's what gives you that's what makes you you. Problem solving, cognition, personality, what makes you unique, that all is derived from your frontal lobe. And you've got historical figures supposedly like, what the hell is his name? Dude got a railroad spike. He was priming a dynamite hole or something, and the railroad spike came up and hit him through the friggin' face and the skull, and it blew out this aspect of his brain, and he was never the same thereafter. He was like a nice guy prior to, he was a real dickhead after that. This guy is a neurologically significant historical figure working on the railroad all live long day, and then he lost that part of his brain, and we saw how it changed him. And so now surgeries are performed. They do a lobotomy, where they take that particular lobe out, and this is something that has been done historically in the case of various mental conditions. Maybe somebody who's violent or whatever, they would take that aspect out, and it would definitely change them. Well, not always for the better. Okay, so they got that frontal lobe, it's your personality, critical thinking, etc. Now we got the temporal lobe here. Looks like a location where an earmuff would be worn. It's right by your ear. So hearing is processed here. Also, language interpretation and production occurs here in the temporal lobe. And so that's pretty neat, the location of it, and of course the fact that music, sensory information, auditory information is all processed right there. I've heard of stories, I don't even know if they're true, but about people having head injuries and all of a sudden they're prolific pianists or can speak a different language or some crazy shit like that. And of course, more common, God forbid, somebody has an injury to that area, they would speak very slowly or have a problem understanding speech. Those are called aphasias, I believe. So the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe, and then posteriorly here, we've got the occipital lobe. There's two of those right here. And this is where vision is processed. Your primary visual cortex lives back there. So any sort of visual input, now ironically, the brain, the eyeballs, okay, where those snapshots are taken with nervous tissue just in the posterior here of the eyeball. It's called the retina, is an area back here like a cone. Like a little DirecTV dish, and it receives information that's magnified by the lens, and that visual input about our primary sense is going to be sent through these little HDMI cables here in white. They're the optic nerves, and they're going to go into the skull, and they're going to project through the brain and all the way to the posterior where vision is going to be processed and made sense of. So that's pretty cool. Then we have the parietal lobes. See if I can get a good look at those. Parietal lobes are right here, right in the realm of my camera here. You can see those gyruses and sulcuses really well. Parietal lobes like right in here. All right. So there's some cool features of the parietal lobe, okay? The first one is really interesting. It's called the Postcentral Gyrus. So there's like a groove right in this vicinity here, right about here. That's called the precentral, or the central sulcus. I'm sorry. And then right in this vicinity, there would be something called a Postcentral Gyrus. It's a specific area of the brain that is responsible for motor information. So it's called your premotor cortex in the Postcentral Gyrus. Primary somatomotor cortex, located in the Postcentral Gyrus. It's toward the front of the brain, kind of like mid-front aspect of the cortex. And this is going to control all of our voluntary movements. So if you had like a little laser pointer, let's say, or some electrodes, I don't know what they do in neuroscience or neurosurgery, but you could basically activate this area of the brain right here. My foot would fly out involuntarily, or my arm would go up, or I would, curl up in the fetal, or I would stand on my toes. So you can activate by pressing various aspects of this precentral cortex, Postcentral Gyrus, you can activate the motor system. You can activate our muscles. So you could literally like walk somebody around like a marionette. It's pretty cool. And then so just posterior to that then, if this is the frontal lobe, just posterior to that, in the parietal lobe, there we go. Back here on both hemispheres, you'd have the postcentral gyrus, and that's all dealing in sensory. So if I wiggled here, you'd friggin' that would be tickling your feet. And if I wiggled here, that'd be tickling your armpit. Okay. So motor and sensory information are all controlled in these particular areas of the brain. I should also notice with these hemispheres, left and right, that the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body and vice versa. Hence, if somebody had a left-sided stroke, they would have right-sided weakness. Okay? Stroke is a bleed on the brain, or an occlusion of an area of blood vessels that feed a particular area of the brain, the nervous system. So there are those frontal lobes, or the 5 lobes. Did frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal, and then there's another lobe that is called the insula. Let's see if I can get it. That's right inside here. Between the parietal lobe and the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe, right about in here is called the insula. All right. It's pretty freaky looking, is it not? I mean, look at all these nerves. Again, incoming information and outgoing information. This is basically the entire control center of your body. And that's just the cerebrum. Now, this is what makes us human beings, is this bit of brain marrow, this larger brain material, in particular our frontal lobe, just behind those eyes there and superior to the eyes. That's what makes us, we believe, allows us to maintain the high level of consciousness that we do, and to ponder about the world, to look back into history and to study the world as we know it and the universe abroad, and try to understand things a little bit better. It's what separates us and the beast, that frontal lobe. We're looking at it right there, superior to the eyes. And you can see down there beneath the brain, the inferior aspect of the brain, we've got some other structures. So this is what we call the brain stem. And this is where a lot of our unconscious activity will occur. Places like the pons and the medulla oblongata. There's all these cranial nerves that will pop off of there and control things like our muscles of facial expression and our sense of smell, sense of hearing, all of our senses, plus some motor information. The brainstem is going to continue inferiorly, and it's going to turn into the spinal cord. Now, I know that we often think of like the spinal cord as I don't know, I always thought of it as larger than it is. You know, it's about the size of an extension cord, really. Like the cord itself, not the plug. It's thin, most of your spinal cord, about the size of your pinky. Now there are some enlargements, for instance, right at the neck, this region here, cervical region, you see it's thicker, and then down the low back it gets a little bit thicker. It's because the arms and legs, look at all the wires, the nerves that are going out to the arms and legs, bringing sensation in and powering muscles on the way out. The spinal cord is going to go all the way down, and nerves are going to pop off of it. You see that there's nerves that go between each rib and to our thoracic region there. And then we get to the low back region, and about the level of L2, right here. About the level of L2, the spinal cord terminates at a place called the conus medullaris. It kind of looks like right there, conus medullaris. And it becomes what's called the cauda equina, which we just lit up. And it says they thought it looked like a horse's tail, so that's what they call it. So some dangling nerves. The cord ends right about here, and from it, this horse's tail will dangle, and nerves are gonna pop off. They're gonna go to the thigh and leg and foot, and of course, the incoming sensor information is gonna come up the other way. So it's pretty stinking cool. The nervous system. This is what's running the show, my friends. This is your control center. You know how you have, look at the face, look at all the little facial nerves. These nerves down inferiorly here, following the contour of the jaw. They're going to be providing sensory information to your teeth, and perhaps your tongue, and the salivary glands, and all that stuff. So look at that, man. Good view here. Brainstem, good lateral look at the brainstem. A word on the cerebellum, which is these little hamburger-looking things, left and right. Okay, that's a cerebellum. So they are all about postural control and balance and coordination. I saw a little meme one time that said that humans will have a cerebellum, fast zombies will have a small cerebellum, and slow zombies will have no cerebellum because they can't control their movements. They're always falling down and dragging legs and have no coordination and balance. Because they lack a cerebellum. It's also what becomes impaired in part for a field sobriety test. You got some drunkard out there acting a fool, you have them walk heel to toe, or you have them stand on one leg, or speak even, and they're going to be slurring their speech because all the coordinating activities that occur in the cerebellum are not taking place. Let's see what else is kind of cool. There's so much. Let's see if I can dissect the brain here. Just give that a couple seconds. Let's see if we can look at the internal aspect of the brain. Brain is essentially consists of a shitload of neurons, countless neurons, which are the cells that control all of our activities. And the neurons are kind of like the quarterback. But they have these support cells, which would be the rest of the team. They're called neuroglia. So wow, I mean, if you look at, there we go. Eliminate that too. So we tilt back and look at the eyes again. Now we're looking inside the frontal lobe. Everything that you see that is white, those are myelinated neurons. So myelin is this like a covering for the electrical wires. Wires are rarely bare. They usually have like a plastic or rubber covering on the outside, and that helps insulate them, right? Well, nerves need insulation too, so they do it with this fatty sheath called myelin, and that makes this section of the brain appear white. See if I can remove any more. Take the occipital lobes off. I'm going down and down into the brain. So myelinated nerves are like wires, bundles and bundles of wires, countless, going every which way, connecting all the lobes that I mentioned, the occipital lobe to the frontal lobe, to the, hey, what's going on over here? What are we hearing? What are we seeing? Let's coordinate everything with the cerebellum. See what's going on there. Shake hand the cerebellum. Get rid of these lobes, the cingulate gyrus. There's all kinds of neurological structures that I can't speak to the specific function of. But wow, look at that. It looks kind of spooky, actually. Now we're in the deepest parts of the brain, okay, that we might call, some philosophers and scientists have called the reptilian brain. And this squiggly structure right here in the middle is called the amygdala. Very, very primitive structures, the reptilian brain. This is where we're just acting. This is get out of dodge, fight or flight, love, hate. Eat, sleep, reproduce. All that happens in this deepest core of the brain, the reptilian brain. So if you think about other mammals, let's say, or other animals, members of the animal kingdom, you think about, wow, that lizard it just looks like it wants to eat and or run or whatever. That's pretty much, as far as we know, they don't have feelings to the extent that we do. All right? So they've got maybe this reptilian brain with a little bit of material on top of that. But we've got friggin' all this, let's see, add it back on. We've got all this extra shit. And that's what makes us, what separates us from the beast. We built all this stuff over countless millennia, millions of years, billions of years. Look at that. Processing power, the speed of this computer processor is thinking unbelievable. All right, so we have all this extra brain matter. Let's not think like reptiles, right? Let's have some empathy. Let's have some individuality. Frontal lobe. Let's have some coordination. Cerebellum. Let's maximize on all of our senses. And evolve further. Unless you wanted to be just look like that. You look like a friggin' turd. Yeah, so that's your nervous system. Pretty cool, huh? A lot more to say about that. But I figure 23 minutes is enough. Have a good day.